Born in Ireland in 1837, Mary Harris Jones moved to Canada with her family as a result of the Irish potato famine. As an adult, Jones moved to the United States to become a teacher. Many tragic events led to Jones' involvement in the labor movement. After an epidemic broke out and killed both her husband and four small children, she was thrown into the workforce. Soon after, her dressmaking business burned down in the Great Chicago Fire. After the Chicago Fire, Jones became a member of the Knights of Labor. Jones attended many strikes on behalf of the labor movement.
In the spring of 1903, Mary went to Kensington, Pennsylvania, where 75,000 textile workers were on strike for more pay and shorter hours. 10,000 of these were little children. Every day, children came into Union headquarters, many with hands severely maimed. Many of them were not over 10 years of age. The state law prohibited their working before age 12. The law was poorly enforced, and the mothers of these children often swore falsely as to their children's age, explaining it was a question of starvation or perjury. Mary was deeply moved and disturbed by the sight of these children's injuries from the factories. She wanted to call attention to this issue. At this time, the Liberty Bell, that a century before rang out for freedom against tyranny, was touring the country, and crowds were coming to see it everywhere. She had the idea that these little children were striking for freedom as well, a freedom that childhood ought to have. Mary decided that the children and she would go on a tour. She organized a children's march from Philadelphia to President Theodore Roosevelt's summer home on Long Island. The march, which was made up of roughly 200 children and supporting workers, took place over several weeks. In each stop of the march, boys and girls would parade with banners and show the public the gore of their mutilations from factory equipment. Mother Jones gave speeches that intended to show the public the effects of exploitation and that the lives of these children went out to make wealth for others. Press and people everywhere began talking about the march. Mother Jones gained much publicity for the plight of child laborers, but the strike itself was not successful. Nonetheless, the march was an important first step toward the government's eradication of child labor in the United States. While the strike of the textile workers in Kensington was lost and the children driven back to work, not long afterward, the Pennsylvania legislature passed a child labor law that sent thousands of children home from the mills and kept thousands of others from entering the factory until they were 14 years of age.
Though the children's strike was unsuccessful, Mother Jones continued on in her plight for workers' rights and became a legacy for the labor movement. In the U.S. Senate, Mother Jones was called the grandmother of all agitators. Jones was a force to be reckoned with. Her dramatic speeches drew public attention to the hardships of workers, women, and minorities, giving them a voice. Unfortunately, today few remember Mother Jones, who battled corporate presidents and politicians, went to jail repeatedly for organizing workers, and who converted tens of thousands of Americans to the labor movement.
Mary Harris Jones was a youth development theorist in her own right. She held many strong views about children and what childhood should look like. These views were manufactured as a result of her encounters with young laborers. Jones believed that childhood should be a time of innocence and freedom. Her beliefs align well with the efforts of that era mentioned in Steve Mintz's book Huck's Raft to protect children from the dangers of urban society. Jones also abided in what would modernly be called a social justice youth development theory. This manifested itself in her attempts to rally families and children together around the conversations of the social injustices of their lives. Rather than simply fighting for them in the name of the rights they deserved, she wanted the children and families to be united in the efforts as well. To do this, Jones often used strong symbols and rhetoric. For example, having children tour the country while the Liberty Bell was making its tour was a strong case that they were not receiving the freedom the bell ought to represent. Another example was when Jones had the children in her army camp out on the banks of Stony Brook, where many years before the Revolutionary Army camped. Having the children camp where Washington's brave soldiers made their fight for freedom rhetorically showed the children that they had an undeniable freedom to fight for as well.
You have the destinies of the nation in your own hands. so that she will stand a united force and show the world what the workers can do.